And at topic 5, we are talking about the agents of curriculum implementation and their roles. We have looked at the curriculum development process, and we have seen that there are many players, stakeholders that come into the development process. In the same way, when it comes to the implementation process, there are very many stakeholders and they have different roles to play, and each of those roles is very critical to the curriculum implementation process. We have support resources that are required for the implementation process of the curriculum. Now, the stakeholders, the agents that we are going to talk about include: 1, we have the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Then we have the Kenya National Education, the Kenya National Exam Council. We also have the sponsors and the donors. We have the publishers, we have the teachers, we have the Teachers Advisory Center, we have the religious bodies, and we have trade unions. Now let us start with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, what used to be known as Kenya Institute of Education. This is a curriculum development and research center which develops materials for use in education. This center was established in 1972, and the major functions of this center include conducting research and preparing syllabuses for all educational institutions except for the university. They also conduct research and prepare teaching and evaluation materials to support the syllabuses. They organize seminars on any syllabus and teaching materials for inspectors of schools and teachers training colleges, staff members. They also conduct in-service research courses and workshops for teachers that are involved in carrying out experiments and trials of any new syllabus and teaching materials. They also organize orientation programs for education officers. They also transmit programs through mass media, and they organize courses, seminars, and orientation programs for guidance of teachers and education administrators. The Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development also coordinates educational researches in Kenya, and they organize and conduct curriculum evaluation. The second agent is the Kenya National Examination Council. This was created by an Act of Parliament in 1980. It acts as a legal basis for conducting and administering public examination within the country. It replaced the East African Examination Act of 1967. Now, the Kenya National Examination Council fulfills the following roles. It conducts academic and technical and other examinations. It also awards diplomas and certificates to successful candidates. It can invite anybody or bodies outside Kenya to conduct academic, technical, and other examinations jointly with the council. It also advises anybody or bodies invited upon the adoption of examination in Kenya. It makes rules regulating the conduct of examination, structure, and organizations. And therefore, it is related to curriculum development. Basically, the Kenya National Examination Council evaluates. The other agent is the sponsors or the donors. This includes the churches, the women organizations, the women associations, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Guides, and entertainment groups, We also have other international bodies such as DFID, the World Bank, among others, who can be categorized under the sponsors or the donors. Their functions include initiating and refining cultural activities around the school. They also fund free primary education. They promote ICT training. They fund the development projects in schools, particularly with regard to infrastructure. They monitor educational projects that they have funded to ensure that they are implemented to the latter. The other agents that we have are the publishers. The publishers, we have the Jomo Kenyatta Foundations and the Kenya Literature Bureau. Their role majorly is to provide the print media. They publish and distribute books, the readership, the school books, the periodicals to schools. They also encourage authorship, the teachers to write books, individuals to write books, and they organize competition in respect of literary contribution suitable for publication. Then we also have the teachers. The teachers impart knowledge, and their role is to provide a conducive classroom situation for learning. They disseminate the curriculum materials. They carry formative evaluation of the program throughout the term, throughout the seasons, and they design simple research projects and collect data that will help them and help the education office with regard to planning. The teachers also help the learner to understand what the new programs are all about. They make the curriculum real by making modifications and adapting to the school situation. They enrich the curriculum by using local examples. They apply to the local situations, and they use local resources. They encourage innovation among the students, and they improvise and provide the unavailable resources that might be needed in the implementation of the curriculum. Then we have the Teachers Advisory Centers, what we normally refer to as TAC. This directorate was established in 1972 to help the curriculum implementation. They provide facilities for book loans. They organize in-service courses and informal curriculum meetings that will enable the teachers to improve on their standards. They also provide the link between the central office of the KICD and the primary schools. They provide consultancy and production services for the teachers. The tutors at the center, the tutors are at the center because they visit every school so that they can be able to help the teachers. They also help in disseminating the curriculum innovation. We also have the religious bodies. The Kenya Constitution and the Education Act of 1968 provide freedom of worship and participation of religious organization in educational facilities. These include Kenya Secretariat for Catholics, Christian Churches Education Association, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Muslims and Hindu communities, and they also participate in various activities with regard to curriculum implementation. They provide formal education when it comes to the building of the schools. They are involved in developing and approving the respective religious education syllabuses and instructional materials. They advise the head teachers and teachers on the implementation of religious syllabuses in their sponsored schools. They also keep on surveilling whether the right morals, the spiritual skills and attitudes are being administered in the school. Then we have the trade unions. The trade unions in this case include NAT, we have KUPPET, among others. Their major role include to protect members from victimization and harassment by the employer. The members in this case are the teachers. Improvement of the terms of service for teachers that they advocate for. They also encourage and improve morale and efficiency of teachers. They encourage teachers to go for further training, pre-service training, among other activities. They develop relevant code of behavior for the guidance of the teachers that are in service, and they also guide on groups that are concerned with education and the ministries. Now, those are the agents of curriculum implementation and their roles in education in Kenya. Thank you. That brings us to the end of topic 5. Hello, once again, welcome to our class. We are at topic 6. Remember, topic 5, we were looking at the agents of curriculum implementation, and we focused on the roles of each of them. Now, when it comes to the foundation of the curriculums, we want to see on what basis were the curriculums developed. And with regard to the foundation of the curriculum, let us begin by, first of all, looking at the term foundation. What is a foundation? A foundation is a basis. It is the point at which an issue begins. And when it comes to curriculum development, it is the basis upon which a curriculum is developed. And it includes values, traditions, forces that influence the kind, the quality and quantity of the experiences that the school offers to its learners. Now, we have different foundations when it comes to the curriculum. We are going to mention 5 of them. The first one is historical foundations. The second one is the sociological foundations. Then thirdly, we have the philosophical foundations. We also have the psychological foundations. And lastly, we have the professional foundations. Let us start with the historical foundations. These refer to the influences on the curriculum that are derived from developments from the past, from the histories that we have had. They form the basis for decision making and the systematic growth of the education system. Now, what are some of the relevant aspects to be put into consideration when it comes to the historical foundations of the curriculum? We have the early Christian education, we have the Renaissance, there is the Reformation, we have the scientific movement, and the progressive education movement. Let us start with the early Christian education. During this particular time, the curriculum was based on the activities of the church. It comprised the teaching of certain disciplines that were determined by the church. It included the doctrines that were taught by the church. It also included the moral standards, the Christian theology, the science, mathematics, and astronomy. During this particular time, the church determined what the children or the learners were taught. The second one is the Renaissance. During this time, the curriculum of the humanistic schools, that is in quotes, was emphasized. The study of man as a prerequisite to understanding man's role and contributions to the society was the emphasis. Now, the height of Renaissance saw the development of the university in response to the need for higher cadre of professional people with special faculty specializations. And Good in 1960 states that the university developed certain faculties. Among the faculties that were developed included studies in liberal arts, there was the law studies, there was the medicine, and theology. Then from there we move on to the scientific movement period. The humanistic curriculum was enriched with the study of science, mathematics, history, and gymnastics. Ignatius of Loyola developed an expanded and an advanced curriculum as a counter-movement to the reformation of the Jesuit schools. The Reformation contributed further to educational growth by inciting the church into greater activity, particularly in the elementary, secondary, and higher education. That is, according to Kubali in 1968. From there, we move on to the scientific movement in education. It led to the philosophy of realism, which has three distinctive phases with various implications to the curriculum. There is the humanistic realism, there is the social realism, and there is the sense realism. The humanistic realism advocated that student mastery of form and content of the old literature should be a basis for improving the present world. They also drew upon classical literature to cope with the problems and the needs of the 19th century. The social realism, on the other hand, aimed at meeting the purpose of the contemporary world. It was class conscious. As a result, it advocated for an illicit education for the aristocracy. It emphasized on private tuition in the home and also paid tutors. It aimed at producing a polished gentleman in the society. Sense realism, on the other hand, was concerned with the problems of the current real world and emphasis on an instructional approach that was based on sense perception. The progressive movement in education was a reaction to the shortcomings in the traditional school system. They argued that traditional curriculum content included a great deal of meaningless and needless content. It did not give utility to education. It mainly emphasized on academics, and it introduced the child to subject matter that was of no practical value. It was also rigid and did not cater for the individual needs of a particular student. Historical foundations laid the basis, provided the basis on which governments made decisions with regard to the current curriculums that we have in place in the society. The second foundation is the Sociological Foundations. This one encompasses the systematic study of groups and institutions in the culture with reference to their contribution to the process and growth of the educational system, as well as the established practices in the school system. The curriculum designer in this case is actually dealing with cultural values, societal needs, and the learner's backgrounds. The purpose of the curriculum is put into perspective with regard to societal values. Pressure influencing the curriculum is considered. The characteristics of the students expected to experience from the curriculum is put to perspective, and the role and contribution of other social institutions, such as the family and religious institutions, is also put into perspective. Sociological foundations focus on the family focus on the society and the community that the child emerges from. At the end of the day, the child has to go back to the society, and therefore it is also very critical as a foundation to curriculum development. The third foundation is the philosophical foundations. This one constitutes the values, the beliefs that make up the philosophies of life and of education, and have a permeating influence on the other foundations. Statements of educational philosophy point to methodological efforts by the philosophers. And what do the philosophers do? They examine the values in the society. They derive meaning from facts. They organize experiences in a manner that is useful to educational practitioners and to the pupils in the school system. They also justify one or some educational beliefs over the others. They develop new proposals of educational practice for translation into action. The philosophical schools include, we have the traditional schools represented by perennialism, essentialism, progressive schools represented by progressivists, and these theories enable us to determine the subject matter. According to the perennialists, they believe that subject matter should be taught for its own sake. Permanence of curriculum content and experiences is more important than the change. Subject matter has a value which is inherent in the subject being taught. And the educational system should be stable, and its purpose should also be steady. The perennialists' approach to subject matter is that they lay emphasis on classical subjects. These are subjects that are valuable in their own right, and any educated person was expected to have had an exposure to them. They also put emphasis on the desire to make children literate and moral, to enable them earn a living as well as find a useful place in the society. The principles of perennialists include human nature remains the same, and man's highest attribute is rationality. Students should be taught certain basic subjects, and that is why we have the core curriculum and we have the subject-related content. Secondly, we have the essentialists. Subject matter in this case should be taught for the use, and the essentialists devote their time to re-examining curriculum matters. They distinguish the essential and the non-essentials in the school programs. They re-establish the authority of the teacher in the classroom. Essentialists and perennialists, however, agree on the following: that learning involves hard work, often coupled with unwilling application. The teacher's role is to mediate between the adult world and the world of the child. The heart of the educational process is the assimilation of the prescribed subject matter, and that the school should retain traditional methods of mental discipline. The progressivists, on the other hand, look at subject matter as a medium for teaching life processes and skills. They take the pragmatist view that change is the essence of reality. Educators must be ready to modify methods and policies in light of a new knowledge, and changes in the environment are critical to the education process. A good school is not a place of compulsory instruction, but a community of old and young engaged in learning by cooperative experience. The progressivist principles include the fact that education should be life itself, not a preparation for living, and that learning should be directly related to the interests of the child. Learning through problem solving should take precedence over the inculcating of the subject matter. They also emphasize that teachers have to advise and not to direct pupils. That is, teachers are facilitators of knowledge and not directors of knowledge. The school should encourage in other words, the school should encourage cooperation as opposed to competition within the school. So these philosophical positions enable us to come up with three prominent philosophical positions that are closely related to perennialism and progressivism. And these are: one, we have idealism, then secondly, we have realism, and thirdly, we have pragmatism. Now, what do we mean by idealism? This is the belief that is largely traditional in nature, and it is carried out from Plato's writings. They use deductive reasoning in its quest for answers to current day-to-day problems. They believe in the independence of truth from the individual or the society. According to them, there is overemphasis on the intellectual aspect. They also stress on the role of education in the transmission of the cultural heritage as handed through from one stage to the other from the past. They allow the concurrent study of liberal and vocational education as a means to living completely through understanding of life. What about realism? Realism believes in the existence of a real world, divorced from the imaginations of the perceiver. The real world is the physical world of the physical matter of man and has a specific role to play in daily routine and actions. Problems of man in life are approached through the inductive method by which data is gathered to form a basis for new principles and generalizations. It argues that education should induct learners into their culture and help them to adjust to the natural order of things in order to live in harmony with the universe. And according to them, teachers act as guides, making children aware of the true nature of the real world. They accept God as the motive cause of all existence. They also advocate for the study of the physical and social sciences, which are instrumental to explaining natural phenomena. Mathematics is also encouraged, and they advocate for real world. Basically, they are scientists. And one of their advocates is Amos Comenius, John Locke, and we also have John Herbert. Then we have pragmatism. This one is a progressivist position that sees reality as being in a state of constant change. They employ the realist approach in gathering information and facts, and idealists' approach in generalizing about the facts that are gathered. They seek meaning in the immediate situation. According to the pragmatists, education is a means for recreating, controlling, and redirecting experience. And therefore, education should enable the learner to experience situations in practice. Education should also help the learners to solve their problems and is an enabler that should be considered an integral part of life. Education should be systematic and sequential, and that learning experiences should be emphasized. that will enable the learner to get in touch with his environment. Teachers should provide an atmosphere in which the learners identify the problems and seek solutions to them. Teachers should also arrange an environment that provides experience for learners. The curriculum should be organized on the basis of the learner's interest, and the subject matter selected should be selected by the learner to solve the problems of the learner. Next, we have the psychological foundations. These are insights that are gained from psychology, which have a bearing on the learning process. The following issues should be taken into account when dealing with the learning experiences in the curriculum. Consider the capacity of the learner, the maturational level of the learner, the student's rate of learning as well as how they learn. The psychology as a discipline should enable the curriculum designer to know the kind of decision to make when it comes to the sequence that is in each stage of development. When it comes to the organization, the grouping of the learners should be based on their experiences. With regard to methodology, how are you going to teach these learners? It should be determined by the psychological state of the learners. Psychology also contributes to formulation of appropriate educational goals, the decisions regarding the scope of the curriculum. We have different theoretical branches of psychology. We have the behavioral psychologists. These ones have contributed to the decision making of the curriculum through findings and theories with regard to the connectivities. How do we connect learning through the stages? We have the connectionist psychologists, people like Thorndike. In 1931, they established that there is a relationship between the environment, the stimulus, and the response that is given, and therefore the learner's response to the knowledge that is given will be determined by how that knowledge is given to the learner. We also have Gestalt and orgasmic psychologists. These are also called field theory psychologists. These ones stress the understanding of the relationship between the physical world and the world of experience. They believe that learning takes place more efficiently when the learner is given the opportunity to view and to complete the learning process. And therefore, the learner should make the choices that will determine the learning process. That is problem solving. Then, with regard to the mental health practitioners, we have the psychoanalysts and other mental health practitioners. These ones have helped to explain many issues regarding human behavior, especially that which is related to stress conditions. And their findings reveal that a student cannot learn so much when the student is stressed up. And therefore, an understanding of certain basic psychological principles will help in enhancing the effectiveness with regard to planning and development of the curriculum in a number of ways. So those should be put into perspective.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.